Hi, I'm Brian Russell. I'm the instructor for this semester, and I serve as the Dean of the School of Urban Ministries on the Orlando, Florida campus of Asbury Seminary. I'm professor of biblical studies. I've been teaching at Asbury Seminary since 2000. All of those years I've been on the Orlando campus. I've teach online. I've taught in Wilmore. I've taught in Memphis, and I'm looking forward to serving you this semester. And what I want to do in this Bible class, and I would suggest that you do this for all of your classes, but I always try to emphasize this in any course that I teach, and I want you to think about the missional context for what we're doing. As we read the scriptures together this semester, I'm going to continually talk about a missional hermeneutic, reading scripture from a missional perspective, and let me give you the context for why I do that. 2009 was an absolutely critical year where we saw really the intersection of a couple of really dynamic things. At the beginning of 2009, the University of Florida, led by outspoken Christian quarterback Tim Tebow, was playing for the national championship game. Now, something fascinating happened during that game. Tim Tebow, you can Google him if you don't know who he is. He always put on his face paint under his eyes Bible verses. And most of that year, he had done Phil 4:10, which was short for Philippians 4:10. But for the national championship game, he switched over to John 3:16. Now, something interesting happened. By about halfway through the first half of the football game and all the way until the next morning, the number one search on Google search engine was John 3:16. Now think about that for a minute. Here's a game that was played it was two teams that were from the Bible Belt in the United States. Yet persons watching that game had to look up what John 3:16 was. Maybe they thought it was some trendy new shoe or clothing product. The good news here was, of all the places that they could have ended up in a Google search, they end up looking for a verse from the Bible. Uh, the bad news is that they had to look it up at all. So as we work on this class and read the scriptures this semester, reflect and ponder your own context and ask yourself, what do people in my context know about scripture? Would they know John 3:16? And let me just suggest this. If persons don't even know John 3:16, what part of the Bible can you assume that anyone knows? That's going to change how you read when you think about that question. Now, a second great convergence happened in 2009, which makes our work in 2016 and onward very interesting. In 2009, for the first time in human history, more people now lived in urban areas than in rural areas. And so, in a world that's increasingly less literate about Scripture, we have more and more people coming together in cities. I don't know your context. I live in Orlando, and Orlando is a fascinating place to live because people come from all over the world to visit our city. And as I can go around right around the corner from my office, like if there weren't trees outside my window, I could see it, is the Islamic Center of Central Florida. There's a Buddhist temple just a little bit north of the campus. There's a Hindu university a little bit east of the campus. In other words, we're surrounded by all the world's religions in Orlando. If you live in any kind of urban area, it's the same kind of thing, along with people that don't believe anything or involved in New Age spiritualities and all the different options that are available. But how do you read the Bible differently when you have millions of people essentially living next to each other? Now, a third piece that we can talk about is the current statistics of the Christ following movement. If you live in a Western context, meaning essentially North America, well, specifically United States, Canada, I think Mexico remains pretty strongly Roman Catholic, but America, United States of America, Canada, Europe, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, the traditional places that have a heavily Western influence. In those places, there's now 5,000 less Christians every single day in those places. So Christianity is slowly receding from the Western world. Now, some good news is, depending on where you live in the world, say in China, there's over 17,000 new Christians every day. And in certain parts of sub-Saharan Africa, there's also remarkable numbers of revivals, like 15,000 new Christians every day. And so you have Christianity exploding in certain contexts, receding from other contexts. That's the context where we live. So again, think about your own context. Where are you reading the scriptures from? And as we move through this class and we talk about how the Bible fits together, we read through the scriptures, we reflect on some basic practices and interpretation. I want you to think about listening to scripture, not just for church. Again, most of us are here in some way to be trained as pastors or church planners or teachers and preachers of scripture. It's a lot of times we focus on reading the Bible just for the church, for persons that already know. I want you also to think about the persons who are on the peripheries of our communities of faith, or perhaps are far from our communities of faith. And let's read the scriptures also for those who are not yet Christians, those persons who are rooted only in the context of the world. And as you study the scriptures this semester and do all your classwork, remember the why. We're reading scripture so that we can be shaped and formed into the people that God created us to be, so that we can live as God's hands, God's feet, God's mouthpieces in the world in whatever context God sends us. And so as you read the scriptures, make a couple prayers your prayer. I invite you to do this, and these are the prayers that I use. Pray to God that the Lord would astonish us anew each time we read the Bible. When you're astonished, you're ready to open yourself up for life transformation and to share that good news with other people. And a second thing is, don't pray that you master the text. Pray instead that the text masters you. I'm really looking forward to working with you this semester. Again, I'm Brian Russell. I'm here to serve, so let me know how I can help you to succeed and enjoy everything that you can possibly get out of this course.